World War II, humanity's darkest nightmare. 100 powerful historical photos are about to be revealed. Drop a one if you're ready to watch this video all the way through with me. B-17 bombers of the U.S. Air Force flew over Brex. In the early 1940s, they symbolized the Allied air power that dominated the European skies. Berlin's Olympic Stadium was captured in a reconnaissance photo by the Royal Air Force, showing Germany remained under Allied surveillance in March 1941. In September 1944, Peenemünde, Germany's secret weapons base, was devastated by Allied bombings, leaving hundreds of craters across what was once Hitler's proudest site of innovation. On January 2, 1945, the Royal Air Force photographed the Mae Klong bridges and the Tamarkan POW camp in Thailand, where Allied prisoners endured forced labor. Operation Market Garden, the largest airborne assault in history, unfolded in the Netherlands. In September 1944, Allied paratroopers attacked Germany's strategic bridge network. At Gustavsburg, Germany, the Zwangsarbeiter labor camp held thousands forced into Nazi war industries during the darkest years of 1943 to 1945. In June 1944, Allied forces stormed Normandy's beaches on D-Day, opening the Western Front and marking a decisive turning point in the liberation of France from Nazi control. Colditz Castle in Saxony served as a POW camp. In April 1945, just 3 days before U.S. troops arrived, it still held the last Allied officers in captivity. The temporary harbor Mulberry Bee, built by British and Canadian forces at Gold Beach, enabled massive logistics. In the summer of 1944, it sustained the Allied advance in Normandy. Leave one if you feel lucky to be born in a time of peace. Otherwise, leave zero if you are living in a country affected by war between factions. In September 1944, an American B-26 Marauder flew over German lines after destroying a bridge in Emilia-Romagna, Italy, supporting the Allied advance through southern Europe. A British soldier carried a French girl amid Caen's ruins, a moment of humanity amid destruction, all taking place in 1944. 2 German soldiers plunged into fierce combat, one hurling a steel hand granite, while his comrade provided cover fire, all unfolding on the Eastern Front in 1942. A Royal Air Force squadron carried out a night mission. In 1944, they targeted strategic German cities to cripple the Nazi war machine's production lines. On a shattered bridge in Torgau, Germany, American and Soviet soldiers shook hands. In 1945, this moment symbolized unity that sealed the Nazi regime's defeat. In June 1944, during the Normandy campaign, British troops marched with a bagpiper leading, symbolizing discipline and morale amid the chaos of battle. In 1943, Soviet infantry stormed into the Battle of Kursk, the largest tank clash in history, marking a turning point on the Eastern Front. Soviet soldiers posed for victory photos. In May 1945, in Berlin itself, they celebrated triumph as the war in Europe officially ended. a Soviet sniper hid among ruins, fiercely resisting the harsh German siege, all taking place in Leningrad in 1943. In 1940, a woman greeted 2 British soldiers in Belgium with flowers, a rare moment of warmth as war spread relentlessly across Europe. Jewish civilians were searched for weapons by Nazis. In September 1939, this chilling act reflected brutal oppression from the very outset of the war. A squadron of German Heinkel He-111 bombers launched fierce raids on enemy targets, all taking place in October 1941. In December 1942, British troops landed in Algeria during Operation Torch, marking the first major Anglo-American joint action against Axis forces. The Battle of Stalingrad raged for 5 brutal months. In February 1943, the Red Army secured victory, killing or capturing 160,000 Germans, turning the tide of the war. In November 1919, a victory parade along Whitehall drew thousands of Britons and troops from across the empire, marking 1 year since the Great War had ended. Citizens laid wreaths at the cenotaph in London. In November 1920, they honored the fallen of World War I with solemn remembrance and national unity. German political prisoners cleared wartime rubble in Bethune, northern France, under British supervision. This grueling post-war task took place in December 1918. In November 1918, a German U-boat arrived at Harwich to surrender, symbolizing the total collapse of the Kaiser's navy after 4 years of relentless warfare. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace to celebrate. In November 1918, news of the armistice spread, ushering in a fragile new era of peace and relief. In November 1918, war correspondents visited an abandoned German machine gun post along the Hindenburg Line, documenting the final moments of the Great War on the Western Front. A still tank and laughing children amid rubble, likely France, summer 1944, where childhood clung to the silence between battles, as innocence and destruction shared the same bombed-out block. One moonless night over Germany in 1943, anti-aircraft fire stitched the sky, every glowing arc a calculation of survival for Allied pilots in the dark. Tokyo, December 23, 1948. Hideki Tojo was executed for war crimes, a gallows instead of a throne, closing Japan's bloody militarist chapter before the world could begin again. In 1939, in Poland, the first American to die in World War II wasn't killed by Nazis, but by Soviet forces, a rarely mentioned and deeply controversial truth. Leave a 1 if you like this video, and a 0 if you don't. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any of our videos. From Stalingrad to Kursk, most German troops didn't fall at Normandy. They died on the Eastern Front, where the Soviets eliminated 80% of Hitler's army before 1945. Only 20% of Soviet men born in 1923 survived World War II. They weren't just drafted first. They were sent to the deadliest front lines with little training and even less return. At Stalingrad, from 1942 to 1943, the Soviet Union lost more troops than the combined wartime casualties of the US and UK, a brutal fact buried beneath later victory. Leave number 1 so I know you're still breathing and watching this. In April 1941, Gudovac, Croatia, saw dozens of civilians executed by Ustaše troops, one of the war's earliest massacres, foreshadowing genocide across the Balkans. Digging trenches, building bunkers, clearing roads. African labor soldiers took on the heaviest loads. Their strength made them the backbone of French military infrastructure. The Nuremberg trials, held in late 1945, captured war criminals laughing, a strange moment suspended between justice and the shadow of unspeakable crimes. The Panzerschreck captured by American soldiers became a playful prop, and in 1944, during the Battle of the Ardennes, the image showed war could not erase human mischief. In Warsaw, in April 1943, German troops dragged Jews from hiding, an iconic photograph symbolizing Holocaust brutality and the desperate Warsaw Ghetto uprising against Nazi oppression. In 1956, a German prisoner returned to his 12-year-old daughter, a tearful reunion after more than a decade apart in Soviet captivity and war's aftermath. On Iwo Jima's Black Sands in March 1945, American vehicles lay wrecked after fierce Japanese counterattacks, reflecting the Pacific War's brutal cost at one of its bloodiest battles. Under heavy machine gun fire, American soldiers stormed France's beaches on June 6, 1944, the beginning of Normandy's campaign, a pivotal turning point in the liberation of war-torn Europe. On December 7, 1941, a photo aboard a Japanese carrier captured the final calm before Pearl Harbor's attack, the quiet moment preceding the strike that changed history forever. On Iwo Jima, U.S. Navy doctors treated wounded Marines, a sobering image that revealed the staggering human cost of the Pacific fighting in February 1945. On May 28, 1946, in Landsberg, German doctor Klaus Karl Schilling was hanged, ending the horrific medical crimes that left thousands of prisoners victims of malaria experiments. Amid the brutal war of 1942, the image of a Soviet uniformed dog was captured, a rare symbol of humor and optimism amid the darkness of conflict. During the liberation of Paris in 1944, drunken laughter among soldiers reflected deep relief from occupation, brief joy before the war's grim march still stretched across Europe. At the Battle of Dunkirk in 1940, Wehrmacht troops stood proudly beside a captured Saint-Chamond 240mm gun, a trophy showcasing Germany's early war dominance. "Wait for me, Daddy," one of Canada's most iconic photos, taken in Halifax in 1940, transcended war itself, embodying an eternal symbol of father and son. Emaciated prisoners at Ebensee, Austria in July 1945 revealed the inhumane experiments Nazi doctors conducted, exposing the darkest extremes of war crimes to the stunned eyes of liberators. In June 1942, at Fort Des Moines, Iowa, America's Women's Corps tested gas masks for the first time, a symbol of female roles expanding in modern wartime society. In 1945, a 16-year-old German soldier wept upon capture by U.S. forces, a heartbreaking moment exposing the youth and tragedy of a generation consumed by war. In the summer of 1944 on Saipan Island, U.S. Marines rescued a dying child from a cave, a powerful reminder of the innocence of civilians caught in the chaos of war. In December 1944, American bombers struck Austria's rail lines, severing Nazi supply routes at the height of the Battle of the Bulge in Europe's bitter winter campaign. On January 2, 1945, the Royal Air Force photographed the Mae Klong bridges and the Tamarkan POW camp in Thailand, where Allied prisoners endured forced labor. In June 1944, Allied forces stormed Normandy's beaches on D-Day, opening the Western Front and marking a decisive turning point in the liberation of France from Nazi control. In September 1944, an American B-26 Marauder flew over German lines after destroying a bridge in Emilia-Romagna, Italy, supporting the Allied advance through southern Europe. On a shattered bridge in Torgau, Germany, American and Soviet soldiers shook hands. In 1945, this moment symbolized unity that sealed the Nazi regime's defeat. In 1940, a woman greeted two British soldiers in Belgium with flowers, a rare moment of warmth as war spread relentlessly across Europe. The Battle of Stalingrad raged for 5 brutal months. In February 1943, the Red Army secured victory, killing or capturing 160,000 Germans, turning the tide of the war. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace to celebrate. In November 1918, news of the armistice spread, ushering in a fragile new era of peace and relief. Tokyo, December 23, 1948. Hideki Tojo was executed for war crimes, a gallows instead of a throne, closing Japan's bloody militarist chapter before the world could begin again. At Stalingrad, from 1942 to 1943, the Soviet Union lost more troops than the combined wartime casualties of the US and UK, a brutal fact buried beneath later victory. In 1956, a German prisoner returned to his 12-year-old